Imagine for a moment that somewhere in a realm just beyond your grasp, another version of you exists. One who made different choices, one who turned left instead of right, said yes instead of no, who left the job, stayed in the relationship, or took that flight you missed. It sounds like science fiction, right? But more and more thinkers are considering the possibility of parallel realities, not as fantasy, but as reflections of the infinite paths a life can take. Now imagine this. What if that version of you, that parallel self, is trying to reach you? What if there are moments in your life when you feel a strange pull, a whisper of intuition, a dream that felt more like a memory than imagination? What if those moments are signals from another version of yourself, offering guidance, a warning, a nudge back toward a path you once glimpsed but lost? This isn't just mystical talk. The concept of parallel versions of ourselves actually aligns with certain interpretations of quantum physics. The many worlds theory proposed by Hugh Everett in the 1950s suggests that every time you make a decision, reality splits. One version of you chooses one path, another version chooses the opposite. And those versions continue on, living their consequences just like you. But what if those realities aren't completely sealed off? What if occasionally something slips through? There are moments in life when we feel out of sync, like something is just slightly off, like you're walking into a room you've never seen but somehow recognize, or when you have a sudden urge to call someone only to find out they were just thinking of you. These aren't always coincidences. Sometimes they feel like echoes, ripples. But from where, and more importantly, from who? Some thinkers believe that your parallel self, the version of you walking a different path, might not just exist, but might also be communicating. Maybe not in words, not in any way we're taught to listen, but in subtle emotional frequencies, in feelings, in dreams, in hunches. And this version of you, they're not trying to scare you. They're not some ghost or shadow. They're you, but with a slightly different view. A glimpse of the road not taken, of a version of your life that could still be possible if only you'd listen. This brings us to the signs. How do you know if you're being nudged by another version of yourself? Start with the most ancient signal we have, intuition, that deep, undeniable gut feeling, the one that doesn't shout but calmly insists, the one you can't explain but regret ignoring. Some say that intuition is just your subconscious processing data too fast for your conscious brain to keep up. But others suggest something else, that perhaps in moments of openness, during meditation, deep rest, or emotional vulnerability, a message slips in. A whisper from another you. Sometimes this happens in dreams. You wake up with an image, a phrase, a memory that feels out of place. Maybe it's a job you never had, a city you've never visited, a person you've never met. But somehow no. Dreams are the one place where our logic shuts down, and the boundary between worlds gets thin. Thin enough, perhaps, for a message to travel through. Have you ever had a dream that felt more like a memory, or a nightmare that felt like a warning? Some believe those are not just dreams, they're dispatches, not from the future, not from the past, but from a present that exists on a different thread, one that is just close enough to brush up against yours when you're quiet enough to notice. We don't often think of ourselves this way, as multifaceted beings existing across layers of time and possibility. But when you do, life becomes less about black and white decisions and more about tuning in, listening, paying attention to the nudges that don't come from outside, but from within a version of yourself that wants to help. This doesn't mean you're broken or strange. In fact, it may mean you're more in tune than most. We're conditioned to think of the world as linear, one timeline, one reality, but some of the deepest traditions across cultures suggest otherwise. From indigenous teachings to Eastern philosophies, there are echoes of this same truth, that reality is not fixed. It's fluid, layered, and responsive to awareness. Have you ever had a moment where everything paused? A flash of insight so sharp it felt like it cut through time? These moments are rare but unmistakable. It's as if something from beyond your current perspective is pulling you toward a deeper truth, like a memory you haven't made yet or a future that's remembering you. And this might be the core message of your parallel self. Pay attention, not just to the obvious, but to the feelings you dismiss, the hesitation before saying yes, the sudden pull to go somewhere, the odd timing of a stranger's words that answer a question you hadn't spoken out loud. It's in those moments, fleeting, subtle, often easy to brush off, that you are closest to alignment, to a truth that might not come from this timeline alone. If all of this sounds too surreal, think of it like this. Your mind is not just a receiver of thoughts, but a transmitter too. And like any good frequency, sometimes it picks up static, messages that don't come from your current circumstances, but from a deeper part of your existence. The version of you who made other choices and who may now have something to say. Let's talk about déjà vu. That moment where you feel like you've lived this exact moment before, not just in theory, but in sensation. It's more than a trick of the brain. For some, déjà vu is one of the clearest signs that another version of you has already experienced the event you're in. It's as if timelines are brushing past each other, a brief overlap, a ripple. That's not proof, of course, but in a world where time might be more layered than linear, these glitches start to feel less random. Now imagine your alternate self sees where you're going and is trying to steer you toward or away from something. How would they do it? They might send you a strong sense of discomfort in situations that look fine on the surface, a job that pays well but feels spiritually dead, a relationship that looks good but drains your energy. Your parallel self might have taken that job, stayed in that relationship, and they're sending you a signal. Don't repeat my mistake. Likewise, they might send you intense joy or clarity when you step into something new, even if it's scary or unfamiliar. That burst of knowing, that deep, calm yes when everything else is uncertain. Maybe that's because they're living the version of you that said yes long ago, and they're cheering you on, telling you it's worth it. It's important to be skeptical, of course. Not every impulse is a cosmic message. Sometimes it's just caffeine or anxiety or an overactive imagination. But what if once in a while it isn't? What if there are moments when a deeper voice is reaching out? Not to confuse you, but to help you remember there's more than one version of you, and the wiser ones want you to thrive. Dreams are another doorway. Some people dream of places they've never been, yet recognize. Streets they can navigate, buildings they somehow remember, faces they trust without knowing why. And then they wake up wondering, where was I? Who were those people? These dreams can feel more real than life, more coherent than fantasy. They stay with you, sometimes for years. That lingering familiarity, like a scene waiting to be lived, could be a message from your parallel self. Not necessarily a prediction, but an invitation to pay attention to the symbols, the moods, the direction. You may have had dreams that feel instructional, like your subconscious is walking you through a lesson, or even warning you of something. That warning could be a reflection of something you've already done in another thread, something you're about to repeat, unless you hear the echo and choose differently. And then there's the mirror effect. Have you ever met someone new and instantly felt like you've known them for years? Or looked into a stranger's eyes and felt a strange kind of recognition? Not romantic, but existential. Some people believe that our parallel selves are not always confined to another dimension. Sometimes their presence leaks into ours through the people we meet. They act as vessels, mirrors, a way for your higher or parallel self to speak directly to you from behind another face. Even animals can sometimes play this role, showing up at specific times, behaving in uncanny ways. They might represent something your deeper self understands before your conscious mind does. We resist this because it sounds fantastical, but maybe we resist it because it requires us to listen to things that don't always make logical sense, to slow down, to notice, and to believe that wisdom can come from places we don't fully understand yet. Your parallel self is not some omniscient guru. They've made mistakes, they've stumbled, but from where they are, they might see something you've missed. A chance you haven't taken, a danger you haven't noticed, or a calling you keep ignoring, and they might be whispering the same message over and over. You're not alone in this, keep going. And perhaps that's the quiet invitation beneath all of this, to expand your definition of what's possible. We spend so much of our lives on autopilot, assuming that what we can see and measure is all that exists. But maybe reality isn't just what fits inside a microscope or a timeline. Maybe it's also what tugs at your awareness when you're alone, what repeats itself until you finally pay attention. You've likely had moments where your life changed direction, not because of logic, but because of a strange certainty you couldn't explain. You moved to a new city, you left someone, you said yes to something terrifying, and somehow it felt like remembering more than deciding. That sensation, it might be the convergence of paths, a reminder from another you. We've been here before, and this time, let's get it right. So when something feels oddly familiar, when your instincts contradict the facts, when a dream keeps echoing, maybe that's not just your imagination. Maybe it's a message, not to confuse you or unsettle you, but to remind you that your life is not a closed system. It's a conversation, and sometimes the only thing separating you from clarity is a willingness to slow down and listen. You don't need a special gift to sense these signals, just presence, just stillness, and a little trust that the version of you who's already walked a different road might still be walking beside you in ways you can't always see. So the next time your heart pulls you in a direction that doesn't make sense, or a strange coincidence lingers longer than it should, don't rush to dismiss it. Sit with it. Ask what it might be trying to say, because the message might not come from the world outside, but from the deeper world within. Now, if all of this sounds fascinating but a bit too abstract, remember this. Philosophy isn't just about grand theories. It's about how you live. And sometimes, ideas that seem strange or unprovable still have value because they change how you show up in the world. If you walk through life with the belief that every experience might have deeper meaning, that you are being guided, not just wandering, you treat each moment with more care, you become more observant, more compassionate, more intentional, even if there's no parallel version of you nudging your thoughts. Isn't it better to move through life like every thought, dream, and coincidence could be a message? That way, you become someone who listens deeply to others, to the world, and to yourself. And that kind of awareness changes everything. You stop dismissing your intuition. You start questioning your assumptions. You get curious instead of cynical. That's the real gift of exploring these ideas. Not the truth behind them, but the transformation they spark in you. If a version of you somewhere else is trying to speak, then maybe this is your time to answer, not by waiting for signs in the sky, but by becoming more awake in your life, by treating strange feelings as invitations, by honoring your own sense of meaning, even when no one else sees it. And maybe, just maybe, that other you is listening too. Because what if this message you're hearing right now, this one, is the echo of a thought you had before you were even born, a decision made by a different version of you, a message sent forward through time to remind you this moment matters. You're not here by accident, and your story isn't over yet. Maybe that's what this version of you has been waiting for all along. Not proof, but permission. Permission to trust your own depth, to see every strange encounter or intuitive nudge not as random, but as potentially meaningful, and to act accordingly. Because here's the truth. Even if there are no alternate timelines, even if no one is sending you messages from a parallel version of yourself, the impact is still real. Why? Because by entertaining the possibility, you become more mindful. You stop coasting. You start choosing. A person who believes their life is a conversation, even with something unseen, listens better. They live with more curiosity. They don't ignore the little signs. And over time, those small choices add up. A gut feeling not ignored, a dream remembered, a hesitation honored, a moment of synchronicity taken seriously. That's not just mysticism, that's how transformation happens. Maybe you've felt stuck lately, or uninspired, or lost in the noise of life. But sometimes, meaning doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from widening the lens, from letting your imagination reawaken, from believing that the future version of you might be sending back encouragement. Yes, they say, it's hard now, but don't stop here. This kind of awareness doesn't just improve your personal journey, it deepens how you relate to others too. You start seeing people not as random characters, but as potential messengers, carrying lessons, mirrors, or reminders. That stranger who smiled at you, that person who challenged you, that friend who disappeared, then suddenly returned. Every moment holds potential if you're open to the idea that nothing is wasted, that nothing is accidental, that everything, even the weird parts, can belong to your story. And as you live with that mindset, you begin to change. You stop needing everything to make sense immediately. You begin trusting timing. You let go of needing perfect evidence before you act on something that just feels right. Because sometimes the best messages aren't the ones that come with clarity, but the ones that come with conviction. And maybe that's the whole point. Not to decode every message or validate every theory, but to become the kind of person who pays attention, who shows up fully, who listens. Even when the source is unclear, that's what makes life meaningful, not answers, but presence. So when life feels chaotic, when plans fall apart or strange coincidences pile up, maybe the question isn't, why is this happening to me? But what is this moment asking of me? That shift alone can be powerful. It turns confusion into curiosity, frustration into reflection. And if you lean into that question, you'll notice something. The world responds. The more you listen, the more it speaks. Not always with clarity, not always with ease, but with presence. Your job isn't to solve the entire puzzle of existence. Your job is to participate in the unfolding, to treat each moment as part of something intelligent and alive. Whether it's a dream, a gut feeling, or a repeated symbol you can't explain, maybe the meaning isn't in what it is, but in how you respond. That's where personal power lives, not in control, but in awareness. Imagine living like that every day, not paranoid, not superstitious, just deeply awake. Aware that life is layered, that insight might come from unlikely places, that the you in this moment is connected to something wider, past and future, physical and spiritual. And if that's true, then you are never alone. You are never cut off, and you are never without guidance, even if it whispers instead of shouts. So maybe the version of you who's already walked this road, already made these choices, already lived these questions, is still here, watching, hoping, guiding you back to yourself. And maybe that's the real message. Not figure it all out, but stay open, stay willing to listen, because even in silence, especially in silence, something is always speaking, because even the quietest signals carry meaning. And sometimes they whisper, stay close, stay curious, subscribe, stay focused. That's it for now.